Welcome to Think BRICS. Today we have the pleasure of hosting Miguel Santos Garcia, geopolitical analyst at the Center for Research on Globalization and founder of GatoPress,
yes,
whose work you can also follow on Substack. Today we are here with Miguel to talk about Latin America, to understand what is really happening on the ground and what the continent is facing under the renewed aggressive policies of the United States of America. With Maduro's kidnapping by the US and escalating oil blockade against Cuba, we will explore how Latin America is responding and what this means for the emerging multipolar order. Miguel, thank you for being with us at Think BRICS. Welcome.
thank you for having me.
Well, let's start with Maduro first. Well, US grabbed Maduro in January. Now Caracas looks like a US puppet. Does this end Venezuela's BRICS hopes? What do you think?
Well, basically, I will have to say that yes, if, Venezuela will have to back away from BRICS, the BRICS paradigm and the BRICS platform for a while. And this is so because BRICS needs sovereign states for it to function properly. And right now, various things that the US is doing to Venezuela doesn't allow it to be a sovereign state, to act nor behave like a sovereign state. For the first and most important thing is that it doesn't have control over its natural resources anymore. And not only that, the US has set up an oversight on how the profits of that industry also is to be used. So it's not only the resources themselves, but it's also
the distribution.
Yeah, indeed. And who gets to participate. It's dictating the terms, like if it were a branch of government, like if it were some sort of part of the Venezuelan government. So that in itself is very damning for any continuation. Even some Russian officials have stated that they are being, that Russian companies are being pushed away. So it's slowly beginning, even though perhaps Delcy Rodriguez and her government doesn't outright say that Chinese and Russian corporations or the governments are persona non grata. They might soon do that. And the US, besides taking over, it's also given the Venezuelan regime something that it wanted for a long time, which is the realization of sanctions. Sanctions relief is something that even Maduro wanted. So by giving them the carrot and the stick approach at the same time, they've more or less neutralized their desire to continue the BRICS project. And also, this might not be related, but also when Brazil vetoed Venezuela's entrance to become a BRICS partner, that actually rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, because they're like, okay, do we have a future in this? Like if someone just can veto our entrance. So
that happened actually in Kazan in the 2024 summit, when Brazilian representative, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, because Lula himself did not attend that period, vetoed Venezuelan bid to become a BRICS partner. Right. Now let's talk about something that, in my opinion, few people know. Iran has been Venezuela's major partner for years. Venezuela has over 300 billion barrels of oil, but this oil is thick, heavy oil. It's actually like a mud It won't flow. And US refineries crave it, but they need Iranian light oil to mix it up, to thin it out, to make it literally, I don't know, sellable worldwide. US grabbed Maduro in January to control those fields of oil. Now we are in March and we are entered actually the third week of the war on Iran. Let's forget about human rights and all that lies about it. Is the chemistry of oil is the main reason for this insane war? Or is it one of many cynical reasons that drive the United States of America to want to control Asia as well?
Yeah, good question. I think it's part of various reasons. I think that when the U.S. does something, the U.S. is very likes to calculate its moves. When the U.S. does a move, it likes to accomplish various things in each move, not only one thing. So I think the chemistry angle is part of it, because if Iran is defeated, they will definitely do that.
Yeah.
They will utilize that sweet oil to refine the Venezuelan crude oil. But besides that, I think it's also it's very related. It's also about controlling the BRICS platforms resources, their energy, where BRICS gets their energy from. So by controlling the resources BRICS states utilize, they want to slow down multipolarity, the global transition to multipolarity, which is one of the main policies of the U.S. right now.
Yeah.
Even though Rubio himself accepted that we're in a multipolar age, that doesn't mean they can do anything about it. And they're definitely doing a lot about it in trying to slow it down or even push it back, like in Latin America. In Latin America, they're trying to create a zone, a unipolar, like a little base of operations where unipolarity still reigns supreme.
Yeah. Yeah, to slow the Asia and to control the Asia by means of controlling Iranian oil, because we know very well that China, India, they're the main trading partner for Iran for its raw materials. So controlling Asia, it's not on. The United States, in my opinion, would like to control Iranian oil not only for themselves to benefit, to make money off, but also to control.
Yes.
And to push back the development of Asian region in order to be the hegemon worldwide.
China last year bought 30% of its oil from Iran. So definitely they're trying to put a stop to the development of multipolarity everywhere. India, of course, it would be a part of it, because they not only want to control the producers, they also want to control the buyers.
Consumers,
they want to control the whole energy industries, which is a very difficult task. But they're trying to do it with all of their tools, which are sanctions, tariffs, military pressure, and hybrid war.
And war by the end.
And war, and conventional war.
Well, let's shift our attention to Cuba and to talk about Cuba. Cuba has become a BRICS partner since the last year. Trump now stops all oil shipments, even from Russia, from Mexico, and all other countries to Cuba. Cuba has no fuel. Cuba has no energy. People suffer. Russia sits 9,000 kilometers away from Cuba. China, 13,000 kilometers away from Cuba. So it's almost impossible. Military help stays impossible, we can say. So there is no bases, no fast, army reach, because the U.S. Has Cuba just right the next door. In one of your articles, you also mentioned that Cuba is hesitant when it comes to fully embracing its ties with Russia or China. But they are still keeping an eye on US deal. Can you explain this concept a little bit more and then tell us how Russia, China and the BRICS as a group in general may help Cuba survive as an independent state?
Well, definitely Cuba is keeping more than an eye for the US. I think for a while they've been doing a pivot to the US, but no one has answered that call. Like in some of their universities, they don't study multipolarity or Chinese or Russian modernization techniques. They're mostly talking about how to empathize with the US and how to understand that the United States in order to continue with their pivot. So they're in a lot of trouble right now, and part of what I was trying to say in my article about they're being hesitant is that they haven't done enough to prepare for this scenario. It's like all they had was their victimization, which is of course is true because they have faced an embargo and a lot of sanctions like for years, for decades, and now it's been redoubled with an actual blockade.
Yeah.
So there are different victims of that. The thing is that you cannot face the threats from another state just by saying that you're being victimized. You have to create a plan, and I haven't seen the Cuban government do that. If I were in the Cuban government, I would have enticed Russian and Chinese companies and their governments with more of a stake in Cuba in order to make them more willingly protect and invest in Cuba. But they haven't done that. They're dragging their feet when it comes to taking Russian and Chinese modernization proposals seriously, because they just want to. That would be okay if they weren't in the situation they have been for the last 20 years. If they were like another state, like El Salvador or something like that, but they have been in an embargo for so many decades. To have that hesitant way of going about your modernization, and when you're being constantly offered proposals by Chinese and Russians, I think it's irresponsible, and it's like a slow motion capitulation. It's what I would have to say. And the people are suffering right now, and not only because of the electricity, but the electricity is also tied to a lot of water systems. So a lot of areas in Cuba don't have water right now as well. So it's a very hard situation that I'm not sure the Cuban government has calculated how to go about it, because if you want to negotiate with someone, you have to do it from a strong position.
Yeah.
They should have embraced China and Russia more to be modernized and developed, and from that position then commence that pivot. But from a position of weakness, like even Russia, which is so strong, the U.S. thinks that sometimes that they are weak, and they continue their war in Ukraine, because they have understood Russians' willingness to negotiate as weakness. Yeah. Imagine Cuba, their willingness to negotiate when they have basically nothing to protect themselves.
Can we say that, like we say in Russia, Cuba was trying to sit on two chairs, waiting for proposals from the United States, from the other side, waiting proposals coming from Russia or China, but they're not choosing sides. So in Russia we say sitting on two chairs, means
But
no right, no left.
they could have done that because many states want to do that and do that. But the thing is, in order to have been able to do that, they had to become strong. They have to stabilize, and they weren't stable in the last 20 or so years. So they had to pivot to Russia and China, like I would say for 15 years, like totally committed. Even offering concessions of ports for Cuba and Russia to operate. And then once they're strong, then you can do what you were saying, sitting on two fences. But it's like they didn't understand how negotiation works. It's very amateurish, and it surprised me that they didn't have a plan, and that they actually because if you trust the U.S. in this way, you're actually doing accepting a friendly takeover, which is what Trump said. If you haven't prepared yourself to negotiate with the U.S., then you're basically forfeiting.
So, in conclusion, we may say that it's
Cuba's
government's guilt
I
to
think
find
where they. I think that they're the responsible for this situation. They're the ones in power. They're the ones in charge. They should have foreseen this situation, and they should have not played so hard to get with Russian and Chinese proposals. They should have accepted them and start modernizing. It's better to have something than nothing, and having half partnerships with China and Russia wasn't enough, because a lot of the Russian and Chinese corporations fear sanctions just as much as any other corporations from any other states. So you would have to make good offers and good deals in order to entice Russian and Chinese companies to stick with you through the hardships. And I don't think they did that. I'm not sure they even the way they were talking about the U.S. It's like Obama brainwashed them. I think the Obama administration made them lose their geopolitical capacities, and they thought that the U.S. was a good guy or something like that. And well, this is what happens when you miscalculate.
Well, Latin America in general is not very easy region. It's not only about Cuba, other countries as well. For example, Nicaragua. Take Nicaragua. Well, Trump's talks of friendly takeover of Cuba means economic reforms without invasion.
Venezuela 2.0.
Yeah, but we do remember Venezuela. According to Axios, that agency, Rubio secretly met with Raul Castro's grandson, saying the regime must go. I saw on Reuters the other day, Trump told that Cuba is in talks with him and Rubio at the Shield of America summit in Miami last week it was. That's an anti-cartel stuff. So he says Cuba is at the end of the line because it's linked to cartels and anti-US moves and etc. So what's at stake for Cuba? And are Cubans still loyal to the ideas of the revolution, or are they tempted by the Western narrative of so-called freedom?
Well, on whether they're negotiating, I think they are negotiating, the government and the U.S. But I'm not certain that everything stated is accurate, because the U.S. likes to mix truths with lies in order to make them more enticing for their propaganda and their points of view. So I'm not sure that they actually said that the regime has to go, although they probably are saying that in the negotiations. But I'm not sure that the grandson is even in the negotiations. So, but they're definitely negotiating. The thing is that, as we said earlier, how are you going to negotiate from the current position where you are, where you don't have any, like when you negotiate, you have to have the capacity to say no, but do they have the capacity to say no when they're blockaded and they don't have, they haven't built any worthwhile partnerships with other states from multipolarity? Like that's the thing of multipolarity being only a slogan instead of you actually building things to make it a reality. Like if you don't negotiate well with the Chinese and the Russians, then you're not actually building a multipolarity. You're just using slogans, which is apparently what many in Latin America were doing.
But if we take people on the ground, normal, ordinary people who are living their lives, everyday lives, you know the region very well. How do you, I don't know, explain their mood?
Well,
do they still believe in?
I think that there's a few factors that we have to take into account to answer that question. I think one of the first one is that it's a lot of new people that are now in the Communist Party of Cuba. It's not the same people from the past. So these people have, we will have to see if they pass the test of loyalty. And in terms of the population, the government has done a good job in keeping them, in giving them all the basic necessities of life, to keep them like, you know, healthy, educated, with the healthcare, healthy and well-fed, and with good living conditions. But at the end of the day, is it enough when you compare it with what they see as the standards of living in other Latin American states or even in the US? Because the internet itself allows them to be able to create these comparisons by themselves. So perhaps there's a lot of loyalty if things were stable, but things are not stable. Right now they're taking away, they don't have electricity. Sometimes the government doesn't, like the government, when the lights go out, when there's no electricity, the government is supposed to, like, I don't know what the word is, like switch the power outages around, so nobody stays without power for too much time. They're not doing that too efficiently. I've heard of some places that haven't had electricity for a month.
A month? Yeah.
So mistakes like that will cost and create resentment. So we will have to see if the population continues with, wants to continue with the project once they have been put through this suffering for a while. Because this is a siege. This is basically siege warfare, like the medieval times. They've been sieged, and they're not allowing their resources to come to the area. So they're basically in a siege, and they will have to hold out, like, and then they don't seem to have a clear plan. So that's why Trump is so cocky when he says that a friendly takeover, because the Cuba doesn't have a plan.
So he probably knows that after living in a country or in a city, I don't know, a household without electricity for a month, you are ready for everything that you offered.
Yeah, even if they were loyal in stable times, once they get pushed, the population, well, they're gonna give in, or there's a lot of probability, not to say that they will. There's a lot of probability that they will, because there doesn't seem to be an end in sight. And the news about a supposed vessel of oil coming to the rescue. Well, that I checked. I checked this morning.
You mean that one from Russia to come to Cuba? That
yeah,
our embassy.
That it was owned by Chinese with Russian oil supposedly. Okay. Well, I've been keeping an eye on it on the geolocation websites of shipping, and it hasn't moved from. It's in the Sargasso Sea. Mm-hmm. It was supposed to go to Gibraltar, but it didn't go there. It's in the Sargasso Sea and it has stayed there like for a week. Yeah. It's like moving very slowly. It's uncertain what it's going to do because it should have arrived by now.
But it didn't.
But it didn't. It's like it's almost stationary. And I checked the latest, from yesterday, the latest geolocation.
Maybe it will. That oil that is now at that tanker will be bought by other country that is recently allowed to buy Russian oil for at least 30 days. I'm talking about India right now. That is under severe hard pressure from the United States as well.
And one more thing was that there's a lot of talk about Chinese solar panels. And of course they have been helpful, the solar panels and the solar parks that China has built. But there's just not enough, and it's too little too late. Mm-hmm. Perhaps if this approach would have started like 8 years ago, and there were many of them, perhaps, but they're not enough to suffice for the needs of the entire island.
Of course, they should have started that project years and years back. Well, we mentioned about oil and the vessels in the sea, and I mentioned India. So let's talk a little bit about India. That is under a lot of pressure from the United States. Now, maybe because it's leading BRICS this year, but maybe India is under the pressure because of its very strange relationship with Israel. Well, Prime Minister Modi visited Israel just 40 hours before Israel and the United States bombed Iran on February 28th. Recently, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bassett has announced a 30 days temporary waiver that allows Indian refineries to purchase Russian oil that is already stuck in the sea because of Strait of Hormuz is closed, they say. Deputy Landau gave a speech in India where he warned, a quote, "We won't let India grow like China to threaten us. We decide your path. Trade deal close, but US first." We know our Indian viewers are very proud of their country and we support that. So, but I think many of you, dear friends, will find it hard to get your head around this. So, Miguel, in your opinion, will India fight back against this control? Or does it have any leverage?
The ways India fights back is by disobeying the US. So it might more or less disobey in some areas and risk itself to be sanctioned. But it's going to do it halfway there. It's not going to do it wholly. So I don't want to say that India is not sovereign anymore, but it's like a spectrum of sovereignty. And by ceding to US pressure, it is definitely sort of losing some of its room to move around, to be able to calculate and to reach its own goals. But at the same time, it probably understands the situation as a threat, which it is, that because as we said earlier, the US wants to control the whole energy apparatus of the world, and is not content only by controlling the producers, which is what it's trying to do with Venezuela and Iran and probably Ethiopia soon. But it also wants to control the buyers. So it's like it wants to take away people's ability to decide, which is something that's part of capitalism in itself. Which is ironic that the U.S., which is the capitalist power, doesn't want people to have capitalism anymore, which is the ability to choose contracts, transactions, and deals. You have to now use this monarchic technocratic order and abide by it in order to do business at all, or you just get shut off. So India is seeing this, and I think they will have mostly comply to it, and when they can, they will try to disobey the U.S. whenever it can. But I think a lot of these states also want to wait things out. They just want to. They think that when Trump is out of the White House, that they'll have a better opportunity to continue with their plans independent, with their plans for being fully sovereign states. But a lot of them will possibly choose the path of least resistance and not annoy the United States under Trump, which is using all of the tools in their in the shred, including sanctions, as we said, tariffs, military threats, hybrid war, and war. So India will have to. India will not fight back in a strong manner. I just don't see it taking place, and more when they paraded themselves with Israel in such a manner. It's like basically saying, "Hey,
we are your ally.
we're good. We're one of you." But one of the things that is really going to, which is really insulting for Indians, is that India has always wanted to have the relationship China had with the U.S. Because that's how they understand China's rise. So they've always wanted that. Bush Sr. was the one that started enticing India that it would get such a treatment. But a few years later, like in the beginnings of the 2015, I think India started to understand that it wasn't going to happen. So it started to look to multipolarity for development and modernization. But now you get U.S. officials telling you that
what to do,
and that they want to control your development, and that they don't want you to develop like China, which is something that a lot of Indians of different parties wanted. So, like, to develop similarly to China. So it's like taking away their main goal. That's definitely going to rub them the wrong way. So probably they're going to bide their time. They might allow the U.S. to push them around a little bit right now, but they're going to keep their eye like on the ball, and eventually, when the time is right, continue forward with all of their various plans. But I think India, at the end of the day, India has always played this game of like being between the BRICS and the US, and this is exactly the situation. Why? Because they know that the US is always going to come back in a belligerent way, and they always have to have one of their feet on that side of the fence, so that they won't get attacked like in a belligerent way. And ever since RIC was a thing, like Russia, India, China, they've been targeted by the US in some manner. So they definitely just want to not see Trump attack them in a direct way. That's what they're trying to appease. I think appeasement is a good word to understand their strategy, trying to appease the U.S. for now. But I hope that they,
for now.
And I hope that they do not abandon their other projects, because if you abandon your position of strength, which is multipolarity, you're in the U.S. pockets, and
you do not have nothing else.
Yeah, and when you don't have anything else, you are screwed, because you'll be in the Cuba scenario.
Yeah, you will be the next to conquer. Thanks, Miguel. It was a pleasure to having you with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Well, I hope to have you with us again and again. Dear friends, follow Think BRICS, follow us on YouTube, follow us on Substack and all other media platforms. Support our Global South voice. Check Miguel's Substack and GatoPress for more fire. Share if you want multipolarity to win. Thanks for watching.